Hey everyone, Colin Christianson here with Tenacious Ventures, and we are at NWES. We're at an expo, and it's an amazing event for event organizers here in Seattle, Washington. And so we are talking to some of the people from the floor, some of the people from the booths and speakers. So today I have Minda with an M, Zetlin. And so she is an author and a columnist. And so we're going to hear a little bit about the projects that she works on. Minda with an M, go ahead and give us a little bit about your background.
So I am a columnist at the Inc. magazine website, and I've been doing this for more than a decade. About 1 million people read my work every month. And the nice thing about writing online is that you get immediate feedback about what people are interested. And I was getting more and more feedback that people wanted to read about work-life balance, how to have a career that they really liked, but not make themselves miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started reading studies and talking to experts and learning more and more about that.
That's
and
amazing.
Grew up
and then you wrote a book
and then
about
it grew up into a
Yeah.
book called Career Self-Care, which is everything I've learned in my career and everything I've learned writing the column about that, about how to work smarter, not harder, what the brain science says about how you should work, and how to have a good life in the middle of doing all that.
Wow, you had me at brain science. So tell us more about the book and tell us more about that, because that's a really interesting topic. And I know you have tons of other things to talk about probably that are expansive, but let's focus on that for a second. So what are some of the best practices that the book talks about?
Well, every single thing. So all these things, right, that I read about and talked to experts about, I also tried myself, because I am as subject to burnout as anyone, writing a column 4 to 5 times a week, plus everything else, plus now being a professional speaker. It gets to be a lot. And even today, even I get overloaded and burned out and overworked. It's really easy to do in our society. So one of the simplest best practices, but not enough of us do it, sadly, in this country, is to have one day of the week that is completely work-free. So I try now, I can't stay away from my email because I'm too much of an addict, but there is one day of the week when I try not to go into my home office at all. I try not to sit down at my computer at all. Or if I am, I'm like shopping on Amazon. I'm not actually working. And I really try and maintain those guardrails because your brain needs that break.
Yeah.
And truthfully, your creativity and your ability to innovate needs that break. It needs that step away from the day to day. This is why it's kind of a cliche that people have great ideas in the shower, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or out walking or fishing, because that's when we step away from our everyday work that we can think about things more holistically and make those connections that make up creativity.
That's awesome. I have that temptation too, that I have a home office and it's just right there and I can go, I'll just walk down and do a couple emails and a couple things. So I definitely can relate to kind of some of that work sort of temptation to go, but that's great advice to have the work day. And what about the brain science? Like what is some of the stuff there? Is there anything to highlight? Is there certain aspects of that relate to other activities, or tell us more about that?
So brain science is really interesting. There was a Stanford study that showed that working more than 40 hours a week, you actually get less done, which is really surprising. I think a lot of us wouldn't quite believe that, but I have found that myself, and maybe you have too, that there's a certain point where you're sitting at your desk and you're not getting anything done.
Yeah.
Or you think, gee, it's been 4 hours. Why haven't I accomplished more? And other days, right? I mean, there's not as many of them as we would like, but other days it's, wow, it's 5 o'clock and I got everything I wanted to do today done, plus 3 other things. How did I do that? And we don't know, but there actually is brain science about this. One of my favorite brain science experts, Josh Davis, says we have about 2 hours. If we really take good care of our brains, we have about the potential to have 2 hours a day of that high productivity. So figuring out what to do in those 2 hours and figuring out how to maximize our brains for those 2 hours is really the goal. And it has to do with a lot of things: getting enough sleep, getting exercise. Even a small amount of exercise can make a difference to your brain function. fats over carbs. Your brain loves fats. Now, I'm not going into the health of it, but I'm just saying a cup of coffee with cream in it is probably better than a cup of coffee with sugar in it if you're trying to energize yourself. Emotional management. And another really interesting thing that he said, which is thinking about how we're spending our time. Because actually, humans, we spend an enormous amount of our day, much more than we realize, on autopilot, just doing things out of habit. And that happens because our brains are energy misers. It's how we evolved. Our brains are very powerful, but they conserve energy every way they can. So every once in a while, something happens that derails your day, right? You're deep in thought and somebody rushes into your office and says something completely unexpected. And your first reaction is, why the hell did you do that? I was concentrating here. Your second reaction should be, okay, this is a gift. This is my chance to stop and think, is this what I'm doing the right thing for me to be doing right now? Because at that moment, your brain is entirely awake and you can think about what's best for you.
That's awesome. Like I can think of several times that like maybe somebody has a request or a question, and then you might want to go up and go do it, but then you come back and you lose your train of thought. So that's actually a great way to almost show more appreciation and gratefulness, really, for the moment and sometimes even people, you might be irritated by it. So I like that approach. That's good. I think I'm going to start using that actually.
And I'm irritated. I mean, my husband has borne the brunt many times because I have a home office of knocked on my door. Okay, why? Was that a good enough reason to interrupt me? And it's true, when you're writing, you really want that uninterrupted time. You need that also.
Yeah.
But it is also true that interruptions, it's good to take those 5 minutes, so just 5 minutes, to say, okay, what's the big picture? Should I be doing this right now? Should I be doing something else?
Yeah, and then I can also relate to the sleep side of things too. Like you're saying, like there have been several nights that I'm working past midnight, and then all of a sudden I realize that I'm not getting much done, and I'm like, I'm just going to go to sleep and try to wake up early to get this done, so that way I'll be more recharged, and it works. Like it'll take me 2 to 3 times longer sometimes just by being sleep deprived.
Right. And some of this is your own particular natural rhythm.
Yeah.
I didn't used to think this was possible until I read from a time management expert that some people are like this. So some people are night owls. I'm kind of more in that category. Yeah. My productivity peak isn't first thing in the morning. It's from about 3 in the afternoon, maybe till like 8 in the evening, which is usually a time that I'm working. And that's kind of my prime time. That's where I'm going to have my 2 awesome hours if I have them in the day. So I just need to know and plan for that.
How do we assess that? Like individually, is there something we can notice about ourselves? I mean, it's obviously an innate sort of thing, but is there anything that we can do to be better aware of where our best productivity 2 hours is?
Well, start by tracking your time. When you started, what you did. Think about at the end of the day, what did you accomplish? And as you track your time and as you observe yourself, I think it should start becoming clear. There'll usually be, at least this is how it works for me with the kind of work I do. There's times during the day when I kind of lose track of where I am or what I'm thinking. I'm just connected with the work and in flow, right? That's the common term for that. So think about what times of day that happens for you. Naturally. I mean, some of it, of course, is going to be built around whatever else you have going on in your schedule. If you have a stand-up meeting every day at 8 a.m., for example, then that's going to dominate how you're feeling in that time. But try and be aware. By the way, speaking of stand-up meetings at 8 a.m., I'm a big advocate of meeting times being from 10 or 11 a.m. to maybe 2 p.m. because that way you get everyone at their best. Particularly for the parents of small children, 8 a.m. meetings are cruel and unusual punishment, in my opinion. That's another story, but also for night owls like me. However, but sleep is unimaginably important, and we do not prioritize it enough. And just to take a non-business turn for a moment, my mother had Alzheimer's. Probably some of the people watching this have been affected by it. And there is recent research to show the very direct connection between getting enough sleep and having your brain clear the plaque out that turns into Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So for the health of your brain, please get enough sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, even like once I started working so much when I was starting my company, I worked hard for 3 months, and I was only getting 3 hours of sleep each night, and
Good heavens.
I'd stay up for 2 days straight every other week. And so it was crazy, and I was like a zombie at the end of it. And then I was like, I need to prioritize sleep. So I went and I did a whole bunch of studies on sleep. I made sure I had a dark black room.
Mm-hmm.
I made sure that like I had no major noises. The temperature was around 70 degrees. And so I've been like tracking a lot of that stuff to make sure that I'm doing it. I got a Fitbit so that I could actually start tracking, making sure I got enough sleep. So I got the Fitbit not for the steps, but for the sleep tracking, to make sure I started to recognize patterns when I was letting myself go. So yeah, it's huge. And I'm still not great at that, but it's been nice to kind of like you're saying, get into it and really start tracking it. So in your space then, do you notice any cultural trends, or do you, with cross-cultural sort of studies, do you see how some cultures have more problems with certain elements of this? And then how does that, again, relate back to your book and some of the stuff you're saying there?
Well, so I have to admit that even though the Readers of Ink are kind of international, we focus more for the U.S. audience. Obviously, it won't be a surprise to anyone for me to say that Americans are some of the worst at the work-life balance thing. I think maybe Chinese people are up there with us, but generally speaking, in the United States, this is a real particular problem. In some of the European countries, not so much, because they have a more balanced view of this stuff and they get plenty done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is a particular problem in this culture.
Yeah.
And particularly in the culture that you live in and the culture that I am writing in, which is the culture of startups, right?
Yeah,
I mean, startup people, you got to burn through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a badge of honor.
Yeah. And there seems to be, with the life cycle of entrepreneurs that I've seen in my life, is they'll grind like crazy at the beginning, then realize what they're doing to themselves. When their business starts to be successful, they kind of take a step back, start meditating, start sleeping more, having more days where they're taking time for themselves. So it seems to be this kind of like, whoop, what did I do? Let's get back to something a little bit more healthy.
Right.
I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say Bill Gates said recently that when he was running Microsoft, especially in the early days, and people would talk about work-life balance or sleep, and he would go, you don't need that. You're bad. You're lazy. And now he's equally competitive about his sleep score.
That's a great point there. That's and I've seen that. It's like the life cycle of an entrepreneur. You could categorize it like that. Well, if people want to get in touch with you or read more of your stuff, where do they do that?
Well, Career Self-Care is everywhere books are sold, including Amazon, easy to get. And on the Inc. magazine website, you can find my work. If you just search Minda or just look around on the website, you'll probably find me. But the most direct way to reach me is mindazetlin.com.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for coming out. You've given some incredible insights, and I hope people watching can take them into mind. I know I'm going to already with some of them. So thank you so much, Minda.
Thanks a lot, Colin.
Yep.